Welcome to the Effects Loop. I'm Chris.
I'm Marissa.
I'm Scott.
I'm Diaz.
And I am also Scott.
And we're keeping you in the loop of the guitar community. This episode is brought to you by Stringjoy, which we have the owner, Scott, on here with us today.
What's going on, everybody? This is, it's funny having a, sponsoring something and then it's me actually there to do it. Usually it's somebody else talking about it.
Well, it's your fault if we, disparage your brand now. So
That sounds good. I think I can handle it. But yeah, I'm not gonna give you any pitch now because we're probably gonna talk a whole bunch about strings and all sorts of fun things later. So stay tuned for more of that.
Yep. All right. So we're gonna go ahead and jump into our what's new. I'll go ahead and start because it kind of leads into Marissa's. Even though last week we said I would never sell my TV Yellow Jr. that you've probably seen on our Instagram, we actually sold that this weekend. And Marissa, tell them why we sold that.
Because one of our hosts is a liar.
that phony.
It doesn't help we did it like right during the episode too, that we actually like bought what we got to sell the Junior for.
Well, no, it was after.
What we were trying during.
Yeah.
But anyway.
So we bought a 2009 Billy Joe Armstrong signature.
Yeah.
Oh, and it looks sweet.
Yeah, it's super relict.
Yep, it is.
But it's a good relic.
Cool.
It looks good. Like we were talking about, there's a lot of companies that make just ugly relics on guitars. Like just, I'm trying to think, were we talking about one that just looked unnatural at one
Many-
point? Or was
It was
multiple
probably
times.
one of the Fender ones.
yeah.
Was it
The
Fano?
Joe Strummer
We were
one
talking
is
about
one
It was
that I
Fano.
remember.
It was Fano. The Fano relic looked really unnatural because it was just in that weird spot right above the pickguard where your arm actually never touches.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Yep.
And we had it was because I took that picture at Chicago Music Exchange where there were
Mhm, that
five
was
in a
it.
row and they all looked identical.
Yeah.
Yep.
You guys remember the Joe Strummer Telecasters that came out?
Yes.
Oh,
Years ago.
Oh,
yeah.
those
Those
look
always felt-
great.
I feel like when you got up close, it just didn't look like it looked like a veneer or something to me. It didn't look like worn
Yeah.
paint. Like the design is really cool though.
I never saw one in person. Like that was it was really cool though, because it's always awesome whenever you see a signature guitar that's interesting enough where you have to find out who that person is. And when that came out, I really didn't know who Joe Strummer was. And I actually searched out who it was, and I was like, oh yeah, okay. Gotcha.
So
Because he was Sex Pistols, right?
Clash.
Or the Clash. No, the Clash. That was it. Sorry. It was a British punk band, the Clash. That was it.
They're all the same.
So on the Billy Joe, there was like a P90 and a P100 version, right?
Oh,
No, it was all P100.
Okay.
But the guy, I think in his thing, it said it like the P100 died.
Mm-hmm.
So it has a regular P90 in it. So we're either gonna swap that out with an Antiquity, Seymour Duncan, which Billy Joe actually uses. He doesn't even use his own signature pickup that they gave him.
He's a phony.
Or
Big fat
yeah.
phony.
Or hopefully Lambertones will have their P90s coming out soon, so I can actually get on that train.
It's a good train.
It's a very nice trend. All right, so this is gonna be Diaz's dumb moment. What the heck's a P100? I've never really.
If I remember right, it's just a stacked humbucker or a stacked P90s. That way it actually cancels out some hum.
I don't even know anymore.
So it's
Okay.
it's kind of cool, but
I wonder, does it get
Ah,
duller like how the Fender stacked ones, the noiseless single coils often kind of have a duller tone to them.
that
They-
might
I wouldn't
explain why
say-
he doesn't use his own pickup.
I wouldn't say they're duller. So I've got the noiseless ones in my telly, but they are definitely darker. So I guess if you want to consider that duller, it is.
What's the
but-
difference between being darker and duller?
I'd say duller has less dynamics. Like it doesn't have the whatever.
Yeah.
I just woke up from a nap, Scott.
This is a genuine question. This is not me making fun of you.
No, I would say
Yeah, I get that thought process.
I would say that so darker is kind of warmer. Like overall, it has
So it has more bass.
more bass to it.
Yeah.
But duller, I would say it has less dynamic feel to it. Like it doesn't react well to your picking. Like if you dig in, it doesn't react well, which my Telecaster actually does pretty well. I wouldn't say so. That's what I would consider the difference between duller and darker. But that's just me, and I'm not really the smartest person when it comes to knowledge.
Oh my goodness.
That's our episode title.
I'm not the smartest person when it comes to knowledge. I've always been one of those people where I might not know how things work, but if you put it in my hands, I can get it to work well. So
Fair.
if I was a guitar player, I'd definitely need a guitar tech. So I'm one of those guys.
So, Scott, our Scott, what do you got new?
Scott, that we don't like.
Well,
Yeah,
now I'm Scott. Fine then. Actually, no. Now I'm gonna just rub this into Diaz because I know he wants it. I got a big ear woodcutter.
I have one. What are you talking about?
Oh, what was the
Now
big
you're
ear
not
pedal that you
unique.
wanted that you're going to
Every
get a
other
tattoo
one.
for? Okay.
Oh, the loaf. I want a loaf pretty bad.
Okay.
Me too.
But the woodcutter, that was like a year
That'll
ago.
be
I
next
actually
week's
bought
to rub
one.
in.
Yeah. No, the woodcutter's a great pedal though. You made a good choice. Did you put it on your board for service today?
I didn't. So, you know how like, especially gain pedals is one of those ones where I have a lot that I like but I don't use. Where it's
Yeah.
like it just doesn't work for what I'm doing right now.
So you don't usually go high. You usually don't go into the high gain when you're playing at church.
Today, 4 of the 5 songs I played, I was just using a clon. Like, not much gain at all. Just because I don't need it. But, yeah, this sounded cool. I liked it more with my katana than the PRS rig. So, it's finding its spot is really what I'm after right now.
The PRS rig is kind of dark, isn't it? Like
It's not like dark the way my Fender is. It's
Okay.
It's brighter than that.
I'll say this about the woodcutter though, is that pedal, if depending on the amp you're playing with, it can be a dark pedal. Like the I guess the tone knob, I'm doing air quotes, which is the filter knob. I usually have it turned pretty much far to the left, which unlike a tone knob, it goes backwards just like a normal Proco Rat does. So,
yeah, I wound up brightening it up more than like I started with everything at noon and then just kind of worked it for a little bit. I mean, bear in mind, I just got this yesterday. It was just too soon to like make a decision on it.
you were in that nice little honeymoon period. You're in the honeymoon period right now. You're like, I have to see how it's going to work out.
And like I've been in this Boss MS3 for the last week, just going through the infinite amount of options and just kind of not really coming out with like a here it is. You know, I'm still figuring it out. So I just went. I'm leaving my board as is and just going to keep going.
Okay.
So that's what's new with me.
Fun. So, Diaz, what about you?
I bought a phaser. And then another
How many
phaser.
phasers?
And then another phaser. So, I bought 3 phasers this week. Which sounds like a lot, but it is. So I bought so I had a Boss PH2 that was made in Taiwan. And then I bought a Boss PH2 that was made in Japan, which would be early 80s. and then I bought that one on Craigslist. Last episode I was talking about I ghosted on a guy on email on accident, but I actually met up with him and bought it. And then I bought a Boss PH1R, which is the PH1 reissue that has a knob to help control some of the tone. Well, it wasn't, so it was kind of a reissue, but it was early. It was 80 to 85 is when it came out. The early 80 ones had the silver screw, and then the later ones had the black screw, which I didn't get a silver screw, but I actually got this one. It was listed at 109 in free shipping, and I sent an offer on eBay for, I was like, $80, and he just accepted it. And I was like, oh, I didn't expect him to accept it, but okay. And then I bought a Veilton, which is one of those Chinese clone companies, PH10, which is a PH1, the original PH1 clone. But it's pretty cool because it's a mini enclosure, but it actually has the Boss stomp. So it's pretty neat.
Yeah.
But I'm going to add on to last week's episode really quick, and we were talking about weird transactions. It took me an hour and a half to buy this pedal at the guy's house. So, but you know how you meet up with the older guy who always is like, oh yeah, hey, I got this and this and this. Why don't you? And they want to talk to you. This guy was actually pretty cool, and I'm actually going to go back to his place and bring my Kemper for him to mess with, and he's going to give me another pedal for my time, which is pretty neat. But yeah, we sat there for about an hour and a half going through all his guitars and his recording studio and all that. But if anyone has seen SLC Punk, there's the guy that they're trying to buy. I think they're buying weed from, and they're like, we have to go through an hour and a half of listening to this guy explain all of his stuff. And it's like, that's what I had to do. But at least he was pretty cool. We chatted for a little bit. And then finally I was just like, my wife's going to think I got murdered. I've got to go. So
I always loved when I sold my Hot Rod Deluxe, I had a guy like that. He came to my house to check it out. And I was just like, what kind of guitar do you play? Here, try it out with this. And he was ready to bring me all his guitars to set them up and stuff like that because he didn't like the way his played, but he liked the way I did. I was like, this is worth my time. But
so, let's see.
Yeah.
Scott from Stringjoy. Scott, we like. Do you have anything new that maybe you've bought recently?
Yeah. I got a lot of stuff actually. Most recently, I got a new Mexican Jazz Master. Not like one of the brand new ones. I think it's like a 2016 that I was able to nab off Reverb for not too much money. I guess whoever had it before had tried to adjust the truss rod without taking the pick guard off, and so it kind of chewed up the pick guard a little bit down there, which I could care less about. But I got it on a pretty sweet deal, and I've never owned a Jazz before, though I played them periodically, and I love that guitar. I love it so much. I don't want to play any other guitar, at least right now. It hasn't really left my hands, so that's been awesome. And then I got a Solid Gold Effects Counterculture, and then also the Electroman 2. Those guys sent me, and those are both a lot of fun too. In the delay and reverb world, they both kind of do crazy runaway, slightly lo-fi, feedbacky delay and verb. So I like all of those things a lot right now. Oh, and I got a Greenhouse Stonefish chorus. I've been busy on the gear side recently. Wow. It goes in waves. I won't acquire anything for a while, and then I'll sell something or other, and then I'll just be intent on spending all the money of whatever I sold right away.
Mm-hmm.
So your Jazz Master, does that have the traditional bridge on it, or does it have a more modern thing?
It has the more modern thing. It's got that little Fender lock and all that, and it's got sort of their, I can't remember what they call their Tune-O-Matic bridge.
Adjustomatic, I believe.
Yeah, that's right. Totally different.
Yeah.
No, so it's all a little bit more modern in that way, which I'm totally fine with as far as jazzes go. I mean, I would love a vintage jazz, but I'm very happy with the $600 I paid for this one.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah, it's not bad for. So did you get a classic player effectively? Is that the line you got?
Yeah, basically. I guess it would have been. Is that what they called them in 2016, or is that the newer term they're using now?
I think it was Classic Player was before they rebranded everything Player.
That's right.
But
Yeah.
it
So yes,
fits
that
the
is
brand
exactly what I
now.
got. Yep.
Yeah.
That's exactly what I got. And
Okay,
it's
cool.
nice.
So
the
you
pickups
have
are so
the-
hot, I have to like back them off a little bit, which really surprised me.
Well, yeah, if you have the 1 meg pots in a Jazzmaster 2, you kind of want to run everything around 8 just to get a
That
little bit of
makes
that
sense.
high-end roll-off.
Because that's what I've been falling into naturally. So that's actually really interesting to hear.
Yeah, it's nice for because like 8 to 10 is not like a big volume jump,
Mhm.
but it will just make you cut more. So it's kind of nice to have that as kind of a a tone adjustment when you need to get a little more boost or cut the mix a little bit.
That makes total sense. I love that thing. Do you ever like buy a guitar and then you kind of think about selling all of your other guitars?
No.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. I did. I sold a bunch of guitars to get one of my guitars, my SG, which is my baby, but that's like the only guitar I really play. I bring my Firebird as a backup, but my SG is the one that just gets all the playtime.
See, I kind of envy that. Like, I've got a bunch of guitars that none of which are all that expensive. Like, I've got a couple of just like really cheap ones and a lot of like $400, $500 guitars because I kind of like the variety. And for what I do, I like to test strings on a number of different guitars, so it just makes more sense to have a bunch of them like that. But like when I went to the tour at the Gibson Memphis factory a couple weeks ago, which I was telling you guys before the show, and I left there being like, why don't I sell all of my my not that expensive guitars and just buy one really expensive semi-hollow body? I get that itch every so often.
Yeah, that's kind of what I did. So like, I mean, but the problem is like, I keep wanting to buy cheap guitars, but then I keep remembering that I sell them. So I've kind of like forced myself to stop buying anything really cheap unless it's like I play it and I can't live without it, because that just seems to be the problem. Like I had a bunch of different guitars that were kind of cheap and they would sit around and not do anything really.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
I've been itching for a
debating
Strat.
selling one.
Are you selling a Strat? Because I've been itching for a Strat. It might have been because I've been listening to John Mayer Trio all day, but
I will soon be selling an 87 Strat.
Ooh.
so how do you feel about sponsoring for 6 more years? No, just
Just go trade.
yeah, that's it. Well, like it'll be 6 years. Everyone else has moved on, and I'm still in here, like just by myself. I was like, I'm just sending out every week. I'm just like string joy, bye. Like that's it.
You can't wear any other T-shirt for the next 10 years.
I don't have a string joy t-shirt.
Well, we
I need to get one. Yeah,
There are string joy shirts?
There are.
All right, we'll talk. Because Diaz only wears guitar t-shirts.
listen. So NAMM every year is how I get new clothes for the year because I have 3 kids and those little turds want to eat 3 times a day, and that's expensive.
Spoiled millennials.
I know. I'm like, listen. There are kids in Africa that only eat 1 time a day, and you should just only eat twice as much as them. White privilege. So
Okay.
Moving on.
That's our cue to move on.
List.
Good leading there, Chris. Good leading.
way to divert.
We have the D. Adario Planet Waves Americans. Oh gosh, this is a very long title. American Stage Kill Switch Cable,
Which they
which
released
is a long way.
Hey,
Yeah,
before
they
we
went
dive
away.
in, Scott corrected us on how to pronounce that one more time.
It is from them themselves. It is D'Addario.
No.
That is the official way to do it. And I should mention that I grew up playing their strings, and I called them like D'Addario or something, when I was 14,
Yeah.
forever. So
I'm
we've
gonna
all
stick
been
with
there.
it until they start
'Cause there's
sponsoring.
totally 2 Ds in there
There's 3 Ds
Well-
actually.
at the beginning, though.
Oh yeah. One at the beginning and 2 square in the middle.
Well, until they start sponsoring the podcast, I'm going to pronounce it however I want to. So that's my new. That's
You're gonna get a
be the-
call
the-
tomorrow.
Listen. If they called me tomorrow, I would actually just be kind of excited they actually called me. Like I'm like, oh my gosh. They're
You'd
like,
just be like, how'd you get my number?
Scott from Stringjoy gave us a lead.
I think they're more likely to call you if I make fun of the patent pending geotip connection on this cable that I'm not sure what it does. Maybe they'll call you to tell
Is it
you.
So
yeah, call us and tell us, and we'll get you on the podcast.
Let's do the whole run through on this thing. It's not a totally new concept. We've seen a few lines from the Planet Waves kit where they have a silent switch in some capacity, whether it's a button you push and whether it's latching or momentary. So it's like
wait, hold on.
Yep.
I actually had one of these before.
Did you?
Not this, but I had a mute. Like I just kind of remembered it. Yeah,
They used to
back
make
whenever-
them, and they would break a lot. I forgot who make them, but
Yeah.
who made them.
was
But
Planet-
yeah,
It was Planet Waves. I had
Yeah.
one that was Planet Waves because that was
I remember that.
really big. Because the Planet Waves and Monster both had kind of the same thing of if you bring it to the store, they replace it. Monster was a little bit better, but which they got rid of that. But like, yeah, I remember I had Planet Waves and I had the mute because that's back whenever I played like through a crate 2x12 solid state and like it was nothing but noise and all that fun stuff, and I would mute it on the right angle connection. And yeah, I mean, like it's the problem is you've got other companies that are doing something better. So Nutric, I think that's how you pronounce. I don't care. All right, so those people, they've actually got one that when you yank it out, it automatically mutes itself.
Yeah,
Which you can.
There's sort of different schools of thought. Like, you know, every switch in the world has a finite lifespan, and it's all about like which one lasts longer, which one works more reliably. I remember like a previous version of this used like magnets to do it instead of like a physical switch. And so there's been different ways of doing it, but my whole grief with this company or this product line was just the price is too high for what it is.
Yeah, because you went and built a cable from Sinusoid that had the Nutric. I'm going to say Nutric, and everyone can just deal with it. Had the Nutric switch on it. It was like the same length, and it's going to be from Sinusoid. So in my opinion, it's probably going to be better quality because it's being, made with care, and it's got 100-year warranty on it.
It's almost like they sponsored this ad just now. It feels like we're giving a free Sinusoid away.
Yeah, yeah, but you get but it was like $10 cheaper.
It's about the same price. All said and done, yeah, like feature wise, it wound up being about the same for a custom variant cable. And yeah. I mean, that all has to do too with like, I didn't use the most expensive cable. I used Mogami in their builder and stuff like that. But it was like at that price point for what they're charging for this, there's a lot of competition. You're priced above the Mogami Gold series. You're priced above a lot of the custom cabling and all those kind of things. So it was just like, I don't think necessarily of Planet Waves as the ultra premium brand of cable. I think of them more in like the terms of like, this is your second cable.
Yeah, I think of Planet Waves like as just not like the lower end like Livewire, but kind of like they're like the Walmart brand.
I mean, they're at Guitar Center and Sam Ash and stuff like that. Like they're
everywhere.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a step above the, all right, here's the cheapest coax cable we have, and we're going to put Switchcraft ends on it.
Okay, no. I know what it reminds me of. You know how like when you go to a shopping place, like say you go to like, I don't know what you got up there in fancy Chicago, but down here in the South, we've got Walmart, and there's the brand of macaroni and cheese. That's the white box that just says mac and cheese. That's all it says on it. It doesn't even give you like the nutritional information. That one's like 50
That's
cents.
illegal.
Well, all right. It's got that's because there's no nutrition in it. So you've got that one right there.
It's no longer
like,
food.
It
So
doesn't even
have
have like a picture on it. It just says mac and cheese on it. And then there's the one next to it that's like great value, macaroni and cheese. And it's a blue box, so it makes you think that it's almost like Kraft macaroni and cheese, but you know it's not. And then next to it's Kraft macaroni and cheese. They're the one right there in the middle. They're the blue box, but they're not Kraft. That'll make sense to a lot of people, don't worry.
So they're the house brand. Well, Great Value is the house brand.
Great Value is the house brand.
Yeah.
So, but yeah. So they're like kind of like the house brand, but they're not the like Livewire is like the white box that doesn't have a picture on it. That's still the house brand, but it's the house brand's low end.
So I
Just
figured out something. It's I'm not sure what the difference is, but I've been here, messing around on the Dario Accessories website, and what we're talking about, the American Stage kill switch cable. That's like the premium line. They have the same thing. They have a 10-foot circuit breaker instrument cable that's 26. So I'm not sure what the price disparity is, but we were talking about how we'd seen these before.
That's less than half.
Yeah. So I guess like they've had it in some iteration for a long time, but there's something, this is the American Stage series, so
because it says American on it, so we get to charge more.
I guess. This is made for the stage, you see. So many of these cables, they're just made for the bedroom. This is made for pros.
I thought if it was made in America, it should be cheaper because the gosh darn tariffs and all that stuff. Okay, all right, we're gonna get off that subject.
Yeah.
So the real fancy thing here is it's a unique form of soldering, they claim so, and then there's it has a different tip than a traditional like
patented geotip.
Yeah. It looks like it's
you
just
can
a different
take
shape
one look
that makes
at this
better
thing
contact.
and you immediately can see that it's just a different paradigm of tip. I mean, it looks just like a regular tip.
Whoa. Paradigm's owned by Ernie Ball. We're getting them.
I
slow
forget
our
about
roll here. I still was one of the people that when it came out, I was like, what's a paradigm?
That was my favorite part. I called them that too.
Did you really?
I
Oh no!
still,
I
every
knew
time I'm
how
reading
to say the
epitome,
word. I intentionally chose to call them that.
Because the way they split it up, it was para and then the dime on the bottom. I was like paradigm. Like what? Like what is this? And then someone was like said it in a video. They're like paradigm. I was like, oh wow, I'm dumb. Don't split up words on me. I don't know what a conjunction is.
Oh my goodness.
So, Hungry
what is this,
Robot.
an English podcast?
Yes, it is an English podcast.
Hungry Robot came out with modular stuff. So they've been teasing that for a while. They're doing Euro rack stuff.
Well, it's not true Euro rack, but it works in a Euro rack. It's like pedals that could eventually be in a Euro rack. So like you can start and play around. They've got how many is it? 13 pedals on the site right now.
Looks like it.
And none of them are terribly expensive.
No, it's like $150 on average. Like I think hold on.
I think the most expensive one's 150.
There's a sequencer.
Yeah, I was just looking at that one hard.
Oh my gosh, they've like done a lot of really cool stuff. So like 75 to 150 is the price range of this, which is pretty cool because I mean when you look at stuff like when JHS came out with their rack stuff, their Euro rack stuff,
it was 500 rack. It's a different standard. I get corrected when I used to say that. So yeah, Euro rack and 500 racks are different things.
Okay. All right.
Yeah, Euro racks are more for synths. 500 series are more for like recording.
Okay.
Yeah, they fit in a recording desk.
All right. But okay, if you put stuff in a rack of some sort, it seems like this is pretty decently priced. And it's Hungry Robot has always made great sounding gear.
Mm-hmm.
Like
I have the Monastery from them right now. I love it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they came out with a Monastery, and then like I've wanted the wash or not the wash, the what's it called? The Karma or something like that. It's the one with the joystick, the reverb and delay.
The Carmen line.
Carmen line. That's it. Yeah. So I'm a fan of joysticks because I'm ADD and I want to play with stuff. And like, it just seems they make great sounding stuff. We ran into them. I met the gentleman from Hungry Robot at Starbucks right before Summer NAMM a couple years ago. So
what's
He
cool
was-
about these things that I feel like we didn't mention earlier is that like they're really made like they are compatible with Eurorack gear, but they're made to stand on their own. Like that's kind of the whole pitch of them is that like you don't need a Eurorack to have these. You can literally plug them into a 9-volt and you're good to go, which I think is actually really cool.
I think they can
build a
take
whole rig.
anything from like negative 12 volts all the way up to 12. So like they can take Eurorack power, but they can run on a one spot if you need to as well. That's really actually impressive.
Yeah, it really is.
And that's what I think is cool is because you don't have to actually like buy a Eurorack, like a case and all that to run them. You know, they're ready to go.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they look like a lot of fun.
I mean, we're not going to go through piece by piece by piece, but lots of cool options there. I think this will hit because we were talking about modular kind of things before, and how like in the guitar world it never seems to kind of catch on because it just gets too expensive to really take the leap into it. Whereas at 75 to 150, you'll pick up 1 or 2 or 3 of these, and then you'll slowly build as long as the line keeps kind of staying alive. I see this one actually being more successful.
Staying alive. Staying alive.
I knew when I said it, I lost Diaz. So
Listen, that's the perfect tempo if you're doing CPR, by the way. Just throwing that out there.
thank you, Dunder Mifflin, employee of safety.
Actually, I knew that before Dunder Mifflin. So my stepdad he taught EMT class. So I've been certified in CPR since like I was 2. I don't know.
So
Concerning, but okay.
So moving into even the more weird and less guitar-oriented stuff, we stumbled upon this Kickstarter that's going on for the Oddball. Did you guys get a chance to really check this out in depth?
I didn't watch the
Yes,
video.
this
I
looks
read it.
Very interesting.
I read about it. I didn't get to watch the video.
Oh, it's a Bluetooth device that will connect to MIDI, and it has a motion sensor in it. And so they put it in a ball, and so you can move it around. You can chuck the ball around, create MIDI beats based on like dribbling or like playing it or tossing it and things like that. And they had some really good examples of kind of fun stuff to do with it.
How big is this ball?
I'm listening to the video right now. It's like in my headphones at the same time as you guys are talking, and this thing is cool.
Yeah, it really is.
How big is this ball?
Like a lacrosse ball or a tennis ball or...
Okay.
The only reason I started
59.
with lacrosse is because that's what's sitting on my desk right now. But
Wait, you play lacrosse?
no, it's just a really stout ball, so I stick it between me and my chair when my back hurts, and I just kind of use it to kind of like massage a point, like if I have a knot in my back. I was terrible at lacrosse when I tried it.
There's a guy in this video juggling with the Oddball and making these super awesome sounds, and yeah, I feel like my only issue with it is it's making juggling look cool, and I feel like that's potentially dangerous for a whole generation of kids out there.
Wait. So is he using just one of them that's working, or is he like got 3 going, making?
He's got 3 going. It's nuts.
Oh my gosh.
Oh, wow.
I don't know.
I
Like,
didn't make it that far in the video.
here's my question though. All
It's
right.
definitely the gateway into being a carny, and that's what worries me.
Oh yeah, gateway drugs, man.
So is this gonna? Do you think this will be a novelty that's gonna be like, oh, this is really cool, but no one's actually gonna buy it and use it, or do you think this is gonna be something that you might see like an artist use at some point?
I
But
think for like a
he's passed his
DJ, this
goal
would be.
in the Kickstarter.
I think this would be a great DJ trick when they're on stage, like if we're doing stage stuff or things like that. Or I could totally see like the Blue Man Group having like 20 of these on stage at some point.
Oh,
yeah.
what about like Skrillex or like one of those guys?
Yeah,
If you could
So
put it into
instead
like
of
a
just-
basketball, then I think you'd be in the money. Like I'd want to. You remember those old Nike commercials where like Jason Williams and the guys were doing like the spider and
Yeah.
other like basketball tricks? I would totally do that with a drum machine basketball on stage.
Listen, hold on. Could you imagine if Michael Jackson was still alive and he got Michael Jordan on there and the Michaels did music together?
That'd be something.
Yes, it would be.
All right, hold on. Hologram Michael Jackson. We get Michael Jordan to throw back on the 2-3. We're doing this. This is going to be the effects loop special. We're going to make this happen.
Well, all right.
So Michael Jordan, if you're listening.
Yeah.
Friend of the show.
He's one of our 4 listeners is Michael Jordan. Be like Mike. Come on. Wait. Imagine if he did the Space Jam theme song with it. Yes.
Oh my goodness.
That's it. I want this to happen.
Aren't
That's
they
my
doing
new goal.
another Space Jam with LeBron?
No, I think that was like one of those like fake things that
Oh,
came out. I hope they don't. They better not sully that movie because I'm sorry. That's going to be a classic. I want to open up.
didn't you
a,
just
like,
watch it
time
like
capsule?
last week?
I watch it like once a week. It's what keeps me going. Look, I watch it before work every day. I have to be to work at 5 a.m. I'm up at 2 starting Space Jam.
Oh my.
That's what makes me get through the day.
So one other kind of, where I totally expected to see this as well would be like a science music exam for kids of like introducing music.
Oh, that'd be pretty cool.
Very cool.
But yeah, they're what, $77 for one, $150 for 2. They're just like just out of my impulse buy price range though.
Yeah, if they were like $50, I'd be like, bam, done.
Yeah. 1 for 50, I'd be all over that. But yeah, it's fun. All these demos are just a lot of wild fun. So yeah, we'll post a link to this in the main group. Looks pretty cool.
Yep.
Agreed.
Whoa, Marissa, I think you've reached your word count for the
Yeah,
day.
someone mute her, please. Thank
Yeah,
you.
that's what,
Okay. Mute.
you've spoken too much.
Actually, Marissa, why don't you introduce this next one that we got coming up here? Oh, we actually muted her. Okay.
Oh my gosh, did we? Oh, that wasn't even me.
Excuse me.
No, we didn't.
I'm telling.
So, next we have the Fulltone Supa-Trem Jr.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. She's like, that's it. I introduced it.
Yep.
Basically.
Next.
So the Supa-Trem is like it's an industry staple for tremolos.
Was it the first tap tempo trem?
Maybe
No, that's got to be Cusack.
that's got to be that's got to be the Tapper roll because John like made tap tempo.
Yeah, that's like
Yeah, but
John's thing.
has Cusack been going since the early 90s, though?
Well, I don't know if no, but John has been making the stuff. Like I think John might have been making the items because he's an engineer.
Mhm.
Maybe before he was really making pedals as a company.
Well, but
But
was the original Supa-Trem tap?
I don't think it was. I know it had the
Oh.
giant
I thought it
had
knob
a-
for right.
Yeah, it had that
No.
last slow.
No,
yeah, I'm looking at the one. It's got a half speed switch, a hard soft
Yeah.
switch, and then a bypass. So that's why this is.
Yeah,
their
no, and it
tap.
has the giant. It had the giant knob.
Okay.
John had him
for,
by
I think,
like
the
12
rate
years.
for you to use your foot.
Okay.
Wow.
I'm here right on the computer to settle any and all debates that occur on the show.
Well, now that I have your phone number, we're just going to call you in the middle of like.
Episode. I'd like to use a
Type this into
lifeline
the Google.
of
When Diaz and I are arguing over something, we're just going to call you now.
Could you like even do side note? Could you even really effectively do the Who Wants to Be a Millionaire phone a friend in the modern world? Because like you could find the answer to any question, like just by typing it in while they're on the show in like no time, and they'd have no idea.
I love the people that will like call me to do something they know I'm just going to Google.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Yeah.
The new Who Wants to Be a Millionaire should just be called like "What Do You Know" without your phone in front of you.
That's not actually a bad
so-
idea. All right.
So my phone call
that.
There we
my
go.
phone call disconnected, so I was actually talking, and I probably talked over someone. So if there's a little bit of jumble right there, I apologize.
Oh, great. I'm going to have to watch the whole episode now.
40 minutes.
We'll just
Timestamp it.
Timestamp 40 minutes and fix it, and then we can cut this part out if you want.
So, the Supa-Trem Jr.
So you're telling
How-
me you guys got off topic without me?
Oh, we stayed
Yeah.
on topic.
Oh, okay.
So, I haven't seen a price on this yet. I don't know if it's bringing the cost down at all at the smaller size. The first press release didn't have any pricing information on it.
I don't see it on their site either.
159.
Yeah, 159 is what I saw too.
So how does that compare to the old one, or the non-junior?
Shit.
I think
It's
I think
hard to
it's
say.
kind
On their site, they don't have the Supa-Trem 2 anymore, which I realize now the Supa-Trem 2 is what's kind of being replaced by the Supa-Trem Jr., and there still is
Yeah.
a Supa-Trem 1. This is all confusing. The Supa-Trem 1 is $199 MSRP, but it's on sale for only $139 now.
So they're liquidating the old ones right now.
Yes, we.
Reverb is not helping the world. So yeah, it's smaller. Does it have? One of the things I know people really like about the Supa-Trem is that the knobs can be turned with your foot real easily.
Yep.
yeah, this doesn't have that. These have just normal knobs on them. I don't know.
That's too bad.
We could tell Mike Fuller about it and
Get yelled at.
see his response. That'd be
I
nice.
imagine the logic is probably that, like, with the tap tempo, then you don't need the bigger knobs.
Yeah,
Yeah.
probably.
Well,
They still have uses, to me, I think, but it sounds more than anything like it's time to get a really cheap Supa-Trem nowadays.
yeah.
Is it
I'd
wrong
say
that
so.
I'm frequently the guy that when like a new version comes out of something that I was already interested in, I'm just excited because the old ones are going to be cheaper now?
Oh
No,
no,
go
no,
grab
I'm
one.
completely the same way. I love it.
Mhm.
Like
I
I bought
particularly
a,
like it with
I bought a
JHS
JHS
when
kilt like as soon as
Yeah.
the new kilt came out. I was like, yes, I'll get an old one.
I still love the fact that the new kilt, like people are just like, I like the old one better.
Yeah,
Well,
that's
it
been
had a bomb
the
boost in it.
response I've heard.
It had the boost in it.
I need to get mine back.
Where's it at?
It's on another pedal board at my church right now.
Okay.
So
It's not my dogs this week.
I actually muted myself. I actually muted myself down a little bit to get rid of the dogs, but since you guys talked about it, that's
You know,
my dogs. Because my
Briefly on the JHS note, while that dog's hollering, I will say one thing whose dog is that? Jeez.
it's my dog, but I keep muting myself on the recording so that it won't pick them up. You guys
okay.
keep talking about them.
We'll probably edit that out then. But I will say one thing I think Josh is doing that's really cool is that a lot of his V2s have been coming in at a cheaper price, which is kind of rare.
Yeah.
I think usually you see V2s being a chance to ratchet up the price. Frequently, I think companies struggle because like you need to raise your prices as time goes on because inflation goes up. But people always get weirded out when you do it. So releasing like a new version is an easy way to do it. But I think it's cool that they're going the opposite way. I mean, the old kilt was like $280 and the new one's like $200. So that's kind of cool.
yeah, it's. I don't know. I actually like the idea that you can on the new kilt, the red remote turns on and off the second gain stage.
That's kind of like with all of their V2s and stuff that's coming out.
Yeah,
Is
but
the-
it's instead of having the boost that you can either run before or after on the kilt version 1. They have 2 other gain stages or clipping stages you can alter. And so that's what the red remote does. So it actually gives you effectively 2 just overdrive pedal options,
Cool.
which is cool. But
I like all
Anyway.
those, like the Emperor Unicorn Panther Cub V2s too. Those went down in price quite a bit, I think, and those kind of all have the exact same features, just in a smaller box.
Yeah, and I think they might have taken the opportunity to fix some issues that they had in the V1s.
Mhm.
So that was like because I know that I played a Panther Cub. I think it was a V1.5, and that pedal was just kind of noisy.
Well, yeah, a whole new layout will definitely change that around.
Yeah,
on the circuit
I'm
board.
hoping. I think that they kind of do that, but Josh is really good about finding out what's wrong with something and fixing it in newer, in reissues or like the new versions. Some pedal companies are just like, oh, well, that's just the way it's supposed to be, and they just keep going, and you're like, yeah, but the way it's supposed to be kind of stinks.
Not a bug,
So-
it's a feature.
Exactly.
Yeah, no. We want it to be that noisy.
All right,
Oh
let's
my-
dive into our topic. So, partly, this is the whole inception of us meeting Scott. Originally, was we reached out to him because we had that list of like top strings and features and stuff like that, and we were just like, we're idiots. We need to talk to somebody who actually knows stuff about stuff.
And clearly,
Wait,
you tried everybody else in the world, and we're left with only me.
No, actually,
at the bottom of the no stuff list.
I emailed you first, and you replied like really quickly, so we didn't even bother reaching out to anybody else. So how
Scott,
about
believe it
that?
or not, you were our first choice to prom. So
Yes.
Yeah.
What an honor it is.
So- well, as long as we didn't take our cousin, we're good. So
Oh my goodness.
But I was so glad you guys reached out, and it's been cool to get to know you a little bit. When you emailed, I was like, you guys need have any interest in sponsorship or anything like that. So it's been cool to work with you. I think with strings, I spend a lot of my time educating people about all the different nuances of strings, and there's a lot of people out there that really don't care or don't know that they should care, and it's my job usually to convince them. So it's nice when people reach out and are like, really interested to know more or to learn the answer to a question or something. That cuts out the whole me explaining why you should care part, and I just get to explain what's up. So
Yeah, well,
thank you
I
for
think
your
a lot of
curiosity.
people. I think a lot of people get locked into something really early because it's just like that's the decision they made. So like I locked into a certain brand of strings, a certain type, and when I was like 16, and I've literally been buying the same guitar strings for all my guitars since I was 16 up until recently, because I just never thought about it. And then I started playing around with it and going, oh, cool, there's more cool stuff here, and there's more options, and I mean, part of that's just from collaborating with you and seeing your offerings. But I guess the first one that... So, go ahead.
Oh, I might be just preempting your next question, but I was gonna say, I mean, I very much was the same way. I started playing a brand of strings that are made in Long Island. I won't say the name. When I was like 12, and it's kind of like you hook them when you're young. So I was playing those forever myself, and the only reason I kind of started the journey into learning more about strings was at a certain point I was I got really kind of geeky into doing some light mods and messing with tubes in my amp and pickups in my guitars and all sorts of things to try to customize my rig and make everything play just right. And there was a certain point that I was just like, why am I tweaking every single thing in my entire rig and still playing the exact same strings? There has to be something there. And so that's what kind of spawned the journey into customizing gauges and eventually learning how to make strings and eventually having a whole company. So all that is to say, I started out the same way. I think you're right. Everyone just you kind of begin somewhere and get locked into something, and that's what you play until you don't.
Well, string companies seem to be really big on brand loyalty. That's one of the things. Like you said, hook them while they're. It's like the cigarette companies hook them while they're young. Like I started off with Ernie Ball because they had the artist list on the back, and I was like, Angus Young plays with these. Yes, all day, every day. And then I moved to D'Addario, and I kind of stayed with them for a while. Probably the longest. And I moved to another company that came out that was most people know about, so I won't say it. But then I moved to now I'm on Stringjoy. So
Well, we're happy to have you.
you guys make good stuff. Like I've like they're on my SG right now. You've got another set coming to me for my Firebird, and I think they sound and play great.
Well, thank you. I mean, I think brand loyalty, which you mentioned, it's a very good point. Obviously, I see a lot of people that'll comment and be like, I use this brand. I've used them for 40 years. Screw you for not being that brand. I'm like, okay, that's fine. You can keep playing your brand. But I think brand loyalty is an interesting thing because too much brand loyalty on the consumer side is kind of bad for consumers, right? Like a company would love nothing more than an entire crew of people that are locked into buying their stuff no matter what. It means that your quality isn't really that important. your service that you're offering your customers isn't that important. If they're like sort of shamelessly brand loyal regardless, you don't have to do anything except kind of steadily cut costs to make more money over time. I think it's not good for people when people aren't as brand loyal and ask more from their brands. That forces companies to have to provide either a better quality product or better service to people.
So, getting into kind of like what makes strings special or different or things like that, because we were stuck on a few like buzz terms and things like that. Hoping you can kind of work through some of these assumptions we've had.
Totally, I absolutely can.
So, the first one to talk about, I think, is we see the term balance tension thrown around a lot.
Sure, yeah. Yeah,
so what is that?
I've probably been a big reason that's thrown around a lot. I'm not the only person out there making a balanced tension guitar string set, but it's definitely been kind of at the forefront of our brand. So that's a big piece of it. So in essence, when you look at the gauges that are in a set of guitar strings, I think a lot of people have this notion that like, oh, these were like put together super intelligently with a lot of measurement and scientific approach to it, and a lot of know-how, and that's not really the case. So back in the way back, you used to be only be able to get like 12s and 13s for guitar. That's what they made for acoustic guitars, and when you started seeing electric guitars, they basically kept the gauges the same. And back then, you're talking about Charlie Christian and jazz players, so that wasn't really a big deal. But once kind of rock and roll started happening in the 60s, people wanted to get lighter gauge strings, and this is where you hear the whole stories of like Jimi Hendrix would use a banjo string on his high E, which he would, but it's the same as a guitar string. It's just it was a way for him to get a thinner gauge. So they would start putting a really thin high E string, sometimes a banjo string, and they would slide all the other gauges in the set down and then like throw out the sixth string. And so that's where you saw a lot of these sets coming from, basically. Like a set of 9s is basically a set of 12s that you slide the wound third, that 24, down to the fourth, and then 32, 42 at the bottom end. That were just, the third, fourth, and fifth strings of a set of 12s. So in many ways, that's kind of how it started. And then the big guy that did a lot of it was Ernie Ball, and I mean like the actual guy that owned a music store. He started fiddling with some gauges. I think they were Gibson strings that he was getting back then. And just kind of put together these sets, right? And they work fine, but the sets that you see today, like the 10 to 46 set or the 9, 11, 16 on a set of 9s, these are literally things that he or a couple other guys just kind of put together because they thought they sounded good. And they don't sound terrible, but it's not to say that there isn't a lot of improvement that can be made. So anyway, when we built out our sets, we had the luxury of not being a brand that's been around for 60 years, that if you changed things up, people would have a conniption. We were able to approach it fresh. So when we did, we built our set of 10s, for example, to have a 13.5 at the B instead of a 13 and a 48 on the low E instead of a 46. And that's because if you look at the tension on a given set of strings, so this is how hard it is to bend that string, there are these two big dips on a typical set of 10s on the second string and on the sixth strings. And people have just gotten used to that. And you can even hear it in some ways. If you play a set of 10s and you really pay close attention to your plain strings, you can frequently hear a little bit less volume on that B string than you have on your E and on your G. So our 13.5 fixes that, and it's the same thing on the bottom. If you've ever noticed playing a set of 10s, you can usually take that sixth string and bend that thing like clear off the neck if you want to. It's a lot more floppy than the other strings in the set. So our 48 aims to fix that as well. And what it means, in essence, is that every string should take the same amount of effort to fret or to bend a certain way. And that's what we call a balanced tension set. There are a couple different ones from different brands. One thing that I should mention here is that a string is not necessarily a string. Different brands, 46s, for example, will have different masses. There's only so far they vary, but they'll have different tensions as well. So a balanced set from one company doesn't necessarily mean those are the gauges that would be balanced from a different company as well. There's a lot of different things going on there. So that's a very, very long answer to a very simple question.
Well, the standard, for lack of a better term, is something that happened just by chance, and at the time to kind of sit there and go, well, we're starting fresh. Would we use what standard? You reassess and look at something different.
I always thought it was just kind of weird that so everyone goes with their sets and they always call it by whatever the high E string is.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, yeah, but what about all the other ones? Like,
yeah, it's
I'm
a good
playing
point.
with tens.
A lot of players know the first gauge, and they sometimes know the lowest gauge. Like they know the first and sixth string gauges.
10
and
to
they
52
very
or
rarely
10 to 46.
know the ones in between. Yeah.
Yeah.
You have that memorized. Do you have your social security number memorized, Diaz?
I do,
Okay.
but I'm not gonna say it. But I will let you know my mother's maiden name and if I and the name of my first animal pet. So
I was just commenting on like the weird things we're able to memorize, and then the things that we just can't. Like family members' birthdays, I still struggle to remember, but at the same time, I know the gauges of all my strings. Like, it's just the weird stuff. So another topic that came up, and Diaz, I think you're playing with this right now as well, is the concept of a wound G string on an electric guitar.
Yeah. So I actually messaged Scott a couple days ago, and I was like, yeah, so what's up with the wound G? Because a lot of people talk about it, and I've never really known. I'm pretty sure I've never played with the wound G, so I'm not. I mean, everyone I guess says you would know if you did, but I've never understood it, and I've never gotten really I want to know what the feel is and what the difference is. So I guess Scott, you can tell us kind of, and it also seems like one of those things, like strings seem to be a big one in the sense of it has a lot of pop words that people use to get everyone's attention. So there's hand wound strings, and you've got the whole custom set thing really isn't as popular. Stringjoy really hit that market, and then but yeah, wound G, hand wound, stuff like that. So I've tell me the difference in hex core, stuff like that.
So there's a lot to unpack there. I'm going to start with your first question about wound G. So that's actually a good thing to ask now, because I was just talking about how a set of 9s in many cases would start as a set of 12s that slid down, right? And everyone found a thinner high E. So that's actually a really good point. Back at this time, all guitars had wound third strings. The concept of a plain third came from that sliding down of a set in order to make a lighter gauge set. That was the first time you'd really see a plain third string, because of what used to be the B string became the G string. So in many ways, that's why if you have a string on your guitar that sounds kind of funky and sounds kind of wrong, in most cases it's the G. And in many ways, this is because most of the guitar shapes that we're playing, even to this day, were made before players started using a plain third string. So in many ways, guitars were designed for a wound third. Does that mean that you have to play a wound third? No, by no means. But that's why a lot of times people have intonation issues at the third string, or they find that their third string really pops out a lot more when you strum a chord than the other strings. It all results from that, because it wasn't really made for it in the first place. So a wound third string, to me, tends to frequently intonate a little bit better. It tends to have a more natural, kind of fuller, warmer sound at that position than having that sort of tinny, thunky sound of a traditional plain third string. And I, for one, am a very big fan of them. I back in high school, was playing in jazz band a lot and wanted to have a wound third for jazz, but I was also playing rock and even worship stuff back then, and all sorts of different stuff. So I wanted a set that kind of worked for that. So that was what started me making custom sets. Is I wanted to get a wound 18 so that I could get a lot of the sound and the intonation benefits of a third string, because my Les Paul back then, it just wouldn't stay in tune on the G. It just didn't feel right. But I wanted to be able to bend it, so that's why I started mixing sets in the first place, to be able to grab that wound 18 and use that. And I really like those like wound 18s or wound 20s because they bend in many ways like a plain string, but they get those other advantages of a wound string. They're kind of the best of both worlds to me.
So typically, the knock against the Gibson headstock is the G string never stays in tune.
Yeah.
Does a wound G help with that?
Yep. Yeah, it usually just fixes it. that's
So there
again
we
like
go.
that's why if I didn't have that issue with my Les Paul back then when I was like 17, I would not own a string company today. That's like what I had to try to fix that darn thing. And a wound string was the only thing that would fix it for me. And that's what started me tumbling forward into understanding strings, because that was the first time I was like, all right, I have this guitar. It came from the guitar store. It should work. And then I'm getting these strings. They came from the guitar store too. I should put them on the guitar and everything should work just right. And so when it didn't, and then I found out that me buying a wound 18 and like throwing it on there made everything work again, that's what kind of like opened my eyes of like, maybe these guys don't know everything.
Well, it's an interesting thing because like on my acoustic, I never really have problems with my G string, and
Right.
it doesn't have that different of a headstock between a Taylor and a Gibson. I know people are going to disagree with me on that, but it's still that angled takeoff on the G, and I don't have tuning issues, but it's wound on an
You
acoustic
have a wound
string.
third. Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's not to say that's the only way to deal with it. A really great tech can do some things to help it, but in my opinion, it really is it really is a thing with the plain third versus the wound third. I love wound thirds, and that's one reason that when I started Stringjoy and we made a lot of our sets customizable, I wanted it so that you could throw a wound third on any set, whether you were playing a set of 9s or 10s or 11s, because for the longest time, the only way you could get a wound third was to get those like the Dario Jazz strings that were like 12s, 12s or 11s or something. I think 12s. And so I think a lot of people like associate the only situation in which you can play a wound third is if it's like a wound 24 or something, and it's this really heavy, unbendable thing, like you would see on an acoustic set. But when you get like a very bendable, flexible wound third, they rule.
Yeah, I had a hard time. So I have this Epiphone Century that I talk about a bit, and I got it because I really loved James Bay's first album, and he was playing a Century, and he had a wound G, and he talked about how the tone of that was important to like how he wrote songs, because he has this chord structure where he just leaves the G string droning a lot and open, and so it's like it was hard to find a proper set for that guitar, which again, Scott will talk, but it's definitely a different animal when you have a wound G string versus a plain.
Yep, I completely agree. But I know what I was going to say. So yeah, you were talking about the buzzwords, and there are a lot. I don't want to get too deep into all this because it's exhausting. But yeah, the string industry is like very, very hype laden. And I think you'd see that in a lot of comparable industries. When you're looking at strings, like it's really the details. The gauging in sets, the core to cover ratios, the materials that you're using. These make a big difference in terms of the overall strings. But when you're looking at one set of strings from one company to another, you wouldn't necessarily see the difference, assuming they had the same winding method. So it's kind of like wine, As a result, when the differences are that specific and that kind of fine, you can a lot of hype gets kind of built up because it's hard to tell people like, oh, you should play these because they have this slightly different tonality. A lot of companies end up really ramping it up. So there's a lot of buzzwords and things that I think don't necessarily have that much meaning in terms of the actual product and how it performs and how it plays. But they, are one way of a company seeming unique. That's a better way to put it. all these companies are making strings that are a little bit different from each other. They really are different. Like I say, a string is not a string, but it's such a finely tuned and finely honed difference that a lot of companies really, have to try to differentiate themselves even further to the consumer. So that's why you see people playing up things like round core or stuff like that. That the difference is a lot more minimal, but they're really trying to make it seem like it's this huge difference.
Oh, it's this one single variable when there's actually, 12 going on.
Exactly. Yeah, it's just like that. It's like if you were wine and, like the actual difference between a wine is the exact climate and the exact humidity, but that doesn't sound very good. So you're like organic, like old vines, like this is old vine wine. And it's not that it's not different in other ways. It's that people don't really understand it. So you try to pick one thing and then you get all this hype about like, does that mean anything? And that one variable doesn't necessarily really mean that much. It's more of a marketing trick.
I just think that everyone should have a video of Kirk Hammett trying to make your the strings go out of tune. That
yeah.
So there's a video out right now of a string company. Which one is it? I guess it's Ernie Ball. They're like the strings won't go out of tune, and they've got Kirk Hammett just sounding absolutely horrible with a wah pedal, like going nuts, and he's like, I can't go out of tune. I'm like, dude, that's not your issue. It's not the tuning. I promise.
And then you pull up the Amazon reviews of any of, and I don't mean here just those guys, but you pull up the Amazon reviews and there's, there'll be a million regular players saying, for example, they went out of tune. It's
So,
always this, or you get an unbreakable string and then, the reviews are all a long list of people talking about how they break.
So I have a question. This isn't like on our list at all. So I know a common thing is that, people are like, oh, I had the strings on for a week and they broke. Or like a string broke. So I know the fail rate on foot switches, like stomp switches. Like you buy like a batch of 1,000 and like a lot of them are bad. So when you guys are building, whenever you guys have strings going out, do you guys have like an accepted it's gonna happen, just it's not quality control, it's not like that, it's just the nature of the beast? Yeah
Excellent question. Excellent question. So yeah, some strings are going to break, and there's like a million different factors here. I mean, I would say maybe 4 out of 5 times that I get somebody writing in about a string breaking, it broke right on the tuning peg or right on the bridge, or against some sort of sharp thing on the guitar. Like that's usually the culprit.
Doesn't Jazz Masters have like a bad don't they have a notoriety for having a string break?
Yeah, it's right there where like there's like a screw like right around where the tremolo arm is, so that can mess it up.
Yeah.
But yeah, so like even with that accepted, there are some strings that just once you get them under tension again, they're going to break. So what we do is just we replace any string that breaks early, and we let the customer decide, what early constitutes there. We haven't really thus far had anybody, taking advantage too much of that. But all you can do
I've had
really
them on
is,
for 3 months and one of them broke. This is ridiculous.
Yeah, and that does happen, but we still replace it. We want people to be happy. If it's early for them, then that's what it is. But what's really rough is, our failure rate, it's very variable, but I would say it's usually around 1 in 5,000 or 1 in 10,000 strings.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah, the issue with that is that when you're moving enough volume, that becomes one person writing in every other day.
True.
The issue is that those people that get those strings are pissed. I mean, pissed, monstrously pissed. The emails I get are always people, threatening my family, and just it's the worst thing that's ever happened. And it's a really tricky thing on my side because, all we can do is try to minimize that as much as possible. And, 1 in 10,000, for example, is a really, really impressive rate, I think, for about anything. But strings are one of those weird things. If that happens, people really freak out. And the thing is, it can happen with any brand. It's kind of an odds game. But for so many people, their opinions of a lot of different brands of strings come down solely to how those odds have shaken out. I've talked with so many people that are like, yeah, I bought a set of Ernie's or GHS or whatever that are good strings, and a string broke. And like, I'll never play that crap again. And it's like, well, that's just, you just kind of got, that's kind of just how it happened. You broke the string.
Because you see that a lot, like with stomp boxes. People are like, the foot switch went out. This is crap made. It's like, no, they're like, it's just a variable, and it's a lot of it's the way the company handles it.
Exactly.
Like you said, I've dealt with plenty of good, string companies before, and especially like the smaller guys, or like the non Ernie Ball and Daddario, they're usually pretty good. Usually it's like you're talking to a guy that like from their personality or such. You're like, hey, and they're like, oh no, I got you. It's sent back out. And it's like, I don't think people understand sometimes how common, like you said, you're putting out a lot of volume, and it's like, or how uncommon it is. So I just thought it'd be cool to like hear an actual string builder or string company talk about like, like, hey, it happens, it sucks, but it's the nature of the beast. We fix it though.
Yeah, and that's all we can do, and I really try to let people know as much as possible. Like, hit us up if it happens. Like, we want it to happen as infrequently as humanly possible, but it will happen, and all I think you can do is really take care of people when that does happen. But I get people, man, that will write in and they put a string on or a set on, and a string broke. They'll always say the same thing. There's like a few components that are the same across every email I get. Number one is, I have been playing for X, I would usually 30 to 50 years, and I've never broken a string in my ever. They always say that every time, and I'm like, I don't believe that. What an insane thing to say. Like, if you haven't broken a string in 45 years of playing guitar, I need to learn something from you. Because I have broken many more. But they'll always say that, and then, sometimes if I try to fix it, there's like, I have no interest. I won't be playing your strings. I'm like, all right. So people really, it gets to me emotionally. I need to have somebody else answer those things, because it's my baby, Like, I really try to have a really, really close relationship with the customer and fix every single problem that can come up. And so it's always sad when people get real angry and mean.
I'm just gonna start writing in random complaints. I'll be like, I put my strings under wire cutters and they all broke. I don't know. This is insane. Like,
well, there's different types of breaking a string that like affects your viewpoint of it. Like, I got a free set of strings at a guitar show I went to. Like, it was just like a goodie bag for everyone who signed up, like the first 500 people or whatever. Oh, wow. And I got it, and the wrap undid when I was stringing up. Like, I gave it tension, and immediately just it gave. And so I was immediately like,
when you say wrap, do you mean like the twist lock on a plain string at the ball end, or do you mean like the wrap around like a wound string?
Oh, it was the ball end at the high E string. Just like, I just kept tuning, and it just kept going and going and going, and then the ball end just dropped out.
Yeah,
it was like.
And that's actually like that's kind of a rarer. So I've talked in my videos a lot about this, that I think a lot of people's opinions on strings are like especially shaped by plain strings. And this is one of those things in the industry that I've tried to shed more light on. I don't know if people hear or not, but plain strings aren't all that different from one company to another. Your gauging's really similar. There's a few different types of music wire. Basically, like, a plain string is made from a type of steel known as music wire. It's a high carbon tempered steel, and it's basically an industry standard. There's a few different things you can do to it, whether you're tinning it or things like that, to change it. But in general, like, a lot of people are using pretty much like really similar wire. So the differences between companies have more to do with like storage and freshness of a string, and then how they're securing that twist at the ball end, the twist lock. So if that twist lock is coming off, then that's a finger pointing thing, certainly. But in a lot of cases, if that wire is kind of breaking in the middle, that could kind of happen from any brand. They're not that different. Like, the differences between string companies are far more pronounced in your wound strings than your plain strings.
Yeah, I always break strings when I'm bending. That's like, if I have a string go out, it's a bend or something. Yeah. But I'm a hard bender. I'm like one of those people that's like, I'm gonna see if I can take it up 3 whole notes. Like, I'm just keep going. So.
Well, so Scott, I guess the last kind of thing I want to kind of talk to you through is everyone always talks about, if you're going to down tune, you need to increase your gauge, and you just recently did a video where you were running 17s. on a 24 and 3/4 inch scale. So let's talk a little bit about that. I think it goes back to your tension discussion earlier.
Yeah. So basically, when you're looking at tension on a given string, the formula takes into account like three main factors, which is like the gauge, or more specifically, the mass of a string, the scale length, and then the pitch. Those are like the three factors that shape tension, and each of those levers kind of changes it. So if you're looking to tune down in pitch, then you need to either or increase your scale length or increase your gauge, or both. Both of those things will help bring your tension back to what you're used to. But you don't necessarily need to change both. So in that case that you were talking about, I was doing a video on YouTube just kind of to show people that you can be a lot more adventurous with the strings on your guitar than I think a lot of people think you can. So I did a 17 to I think 64 set on this little Epiphone 339 and was running it B to B, so basically a baritone tuning. And it worked great. I had to raise the action at just a tick to get that low B, since the 64, to not buzz a little bit. But with really no trouble, it worked absolutely just fine. If I had a longer scale length, then I wouldn't have needed to go as heavy. And I could have done it with 14s or 17s and gotten to B to B as well. But you can do a lot more. Your guitar can handle a lot more than you think. And Diaz had asked earlier in the pre-show that because all those things are relative in shaping tension, 17s aren't necessarily any worse for your guitar's neck than 10s, or than 12s or 15s, as long as what they're tuned to is matching what the gauge is. So my guitar with 17s on it right now has about the same tension as you would see like a set of like 11 and a halves or so in standard E.
And that's just because you went so high on the gauge, right?
I went so high
To
in the
get
gauge,
to
and then I
B2B?
went so low in the tuning.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
So-
the match in general, if I wanted to go like B to B and keep the tension the exact same as a set of 10s, would be like a set of 13s.
Huh. So how often are you seeing people with that? Because like often when we think of a baritone guitar, it's often people trying to sell us a 27 or 28 inch neck.
Wow.
Is this a common thing?
Yeah, it is. I will say a longer scale can be great. Longer scale instruments are awesome for tuning down, certainly. But yeah, we get people that order really heavy stuff. Joey Landreth, who's an amazing slide player, is in the Brothers Landreth. He plays a set of 19s, and he's tuned it to C with those. so that's a lot of tension. And his Sir guitar can handle it just fine.
Well, I imagine when you're resting a slide on a guitar, you actually want more tension, don't you?
Yeah. Slide players can get away with a lot more on that front, and you're exactly right. If you're trying to play a slide with 9s, it's just going to push it down. You're going to be knocking your frets more than you would want to. But yeah, there's always a lot of different things that I want people to know out there. One of them being you don't have to just play 10s on your guitar. Your guitar can handle a lot more than you think. You can definitely go pretty heavy and perfectly get away with it. On the other side, I think too much hype gets built up about using really, really heavy gauges, and you can have great tone while playing really, really light gauges. A lot of players have played 8s or 9s or even 7s and can sound pretty good, especially if you're playing a lot of drive.
I actually messaged you about that. I messaged you about the lighter gauge because Brian May is a popular one that uses light gauge, and so does Billy F. Gibbons.
Oh yeah,
he uses light gauge as well. So it's like one of those people relate beefiness of your tone to gauge, and they're like, oh, if you want a real beefy tone, they're like Stevie Ray Vaughan played with 13s and da 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 da, and it's like, well, that's not always the case.
Yeah, I mean, it is there. Like, certainly, a heavier set of strings will give you that beefier tone. But the thing is, it's a lot more apparent when you're playing clean. If you're playing like with drive, you can run 8s into a Marshall full stack and sound like a monster. There's a reason you see jazz players playing 13s and 14s and 15s, though, because when you're clean, you really need that meatiness of the string to be able to create that full tone. But also, I think string gauge has there's so much to know about it, right? It's my life's work, at least thus far, to know it. But I think string gauge informs, your genre as well, in ways that extend beyond the way people realize. I think you wouldn't want to play funk on 13s. You wouldn't get that fret action with the strings the right way. You need thinner strings for that funk. At the same time, jazz on 9s would sound kind of thin. You really, it's nice to have 12s, 13s, or more for jazz. So I keep different guitars strung with different gauges for different purposes, in different tone, and I think more players should look at doing the same thing. I think a lot of players are just grabbing 10s off the shelf at the music store, and I think people are coming awake to that with strings too. That was a lot of my mission in starting Stringjoy years ago. Was I had watched as a guitarist players go from with effect pedals from being in this circumstance where you just grab a DS1 and then plug it in and that's your tone, to realizing how much pedals can do for your tone and help shape how you are as a player and what style you're playing and how it sounds. And I think my mission certainly is to be able to provide people that same realization with strings, that they're not just this thing that you just grab and at the store and throw on your guitar and that's it. They're far more important than that, I think.
Well, and this is a really good way to say that this is also something that you're passionate about, that you can write in to Stringjoy. Like, this is something that you guys do is work with people on like finding their strings for them that works for the, what they play, what guitar they're playing with, what they like to feel, stuff like that. It's like, I mean, you don't get that from some of these other companies.
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean,
that's a big piece of what we provide. I mean, when people ask me what is the difference with Stringjoy, I think they're expecting me to be able to do this old school like string thing, like, I don't know, Dean Markley with Blue Steels, where you're like, oh well, they're strings, except these are cryogenically frozen, and it's not one thing with us. That level of service we provide, being able to work with people, dial in a specific gauge for their particular setup, and continue to help work and tweak with it and make those gauges easily available for them. Pairing that, I think, with the service you get from us in terms of replacing broken strings or being there to fix that, paired with the level of craftsmanship that we have that goes into our strings, and having this slower, more deliberate sort of crafting process, as opposed to like just a volume-focused factory, which is not how we produce strings. All that stuff together is what makes us a unique option and a different option, and I think it's a powerful statement. I think a lot of players that have come over to our side have just been amazed at, like, oh, this is what it could be.
Yeah, you mentioned a great point there of like all your guitars don't need to be 10s.
Yeah,
and like that was kind of with you. That was one of the things that kind of cracked Jazzmasters for me, and like why I'm like loving my Jazzmaster right now was I've played 10s on a Strat, and that's like what I'm used to the feel on, and finally picking up and using a going to a 10.5. I like the feel a lot more. And like a few weeks ago, we talked about I played one of the Telly with the Jazzmaster vibrato on it, and I was like, it just feels too loose. That was the first thing I noticed, and it's like I need to do different gauge strings to get the feel with the vibrato and all those things to work too. So it's all part of that game that you're playing or adjusting to get it to feel right.
Yeah, totally. And yeah, for example, I've got 11s on my Jazzmaster. I think it came with the Darios, like 10s or something like that. And as soon as I strung up 11s, that puppy it got playing a lot better. It sounds just right to me now. And that gauge differs for everybody, certainly. But you're right. It's ultimately like you're playing your guitar and your strings. It's not like a knob or something on your guitar. Like it's what your hands are actually moving and pushing and pulling around to make the sound. They're the things that are vibrating. Your guitar is designed to create a place for your strings to resonate. You're not playing the guitar exactly. That's kind of silly to say, but you know what I mean. Like you're not like pounding on the body like a drum or something. You're playing your strings and your guitar is resonating.
Yeah, what you're hearing is your guitar resonating your strings and your pickups picking up the strings. Like
Exactly.
that's what it is. But yeah, I mean, this is a prime example of something that people can talk to Scott and the guy, the group at String Joy about. But I think we've really hit a lot of good stuff here. So if you guys have any more questions, also Scott is in the group, so you can feel free to bring something up there. So
Tag me, and I'm always lurking silently in the group.
I love getting random likes from Scott in the group. So
I'm always there.
Yeah.
I'm just not always commenting.
Yeah, I think I tagged you recently in like a Nashville tuning discussion for a guitar.
Oh, nice.
So,
I might have even missed that.
yeah.
Goodness. But Facebook scares me these days, though I do use it a lot and we advertise on it. But my girlfriend and I were sitting around the house earlier, and she was like, "Man, I've got an hour before I have to go help a friend move. Maybe I should learn guitar." Just as a joke, and I was like, "Yeah, we've got an hour. That'll be enough time." But anyway, she pulled up open Facebook or Instagram or whatever right after that, and what is the first thing she saw but an ad from Fender to learn how to play guitar? Now, I'm not saying they're listening to you, because like the actual logistics of storing that data would be hard.
They're totally listening.
But like,
they're totally listening.
Man, it's crazy.
Listen, I'm waiting to get an advertisement for mac and cheese. So, so Scott, it's been really awesome having you on here. I really appreciate it. I know that everyone else does. So, Chris, why don't you do that whole wrap up thing?
Yeah. So, like Diaz said, thank you, Scott, for joining us. It's been fun having you on.
Thank you for having me, guys.
And also, thank you for sponsoring us, since we can actually thank you personally for sponsoring this episode, since you're on here.
Heck yeah. It's you guys are doing. Yes. I know you're doing the wrap up, and people are probably tired of listening. But what you guys are doing, I think, is really awesome. It's great to see really informed people talking about gear and being curious about gear and asking questions.
Hold on.
He has not been listening to our podcast.
No. I want to point out something. I want to point out. Listen, some of us are informed. Some of us have no clue what's going on.
But here is the thing that you do. That differs, because everybody doesn't know some things, right? But especially on the internet, there's a lot of people kind of that have become the new series of experts with gear that don't know the answer to something, but they'll act like they do, and they'll tell everybody this is how it is. And I see it on the back end all the time in my support, because people will be like, "Oh, well, this YouTuber said I should play this for that." I'm like, "No, that's a terrible idea. Why would you listen to that guy? He doesn't know what he's talking about." So you guys, what I think is really cool is that you what you did with me. You know a lot about some things, but when you don't know something, you're okay with finding the answer and reaching out to a source that might know it. I think that's cool. So thank you for being that way.
Oh, totally. All right. So I think that does it for us. Be sure to check out Stringjoy at, I believe it's stringjoy.com, correct?
It's that easy. Yep.
All right. And also you can follow them on Instagram, Facebook, and all that. And keep mentioning YouTube, so I'm assuming you have a YouTube channel for the company?
Sure do.
Awesome.
Yeah, subscribe to that. You do about a weekly blog on that, right, Scott?
Yeah, about a week or two a week. It depends on how much time I have usually.
Oh, nice. So yeah, we'll have links to all that down in the description. And also we'll have links to all of our stuff down in the description. So I think that does it for us. So thank you for joining us. I've been Chris.
I'm Marissa.
I'm Scott.
And I'm Diaz.
I'm also Scott.
And that's also Scott. So, and don't forget to also follow us on Instagram. Check out the Facebook group. Check out our YouTube. If you want to tell us about how your strings broke, you can get a hold of us at thefxloop@gmail.com. And if you want to get
I'm looking forward to that email.
Send it to Blake at thefxloop.com.
Yeah, we're gonna make up. If you can send it to anyone at thefxloop.com, and no one will respond back. So. All right, guys, it's been an awesome episode. We will see you guys next week. See ya.
Thanks, everybody.
See ya.